لا تسمعوا لهذا القرآن والغوا فيه. Do not listen to this Quran, rather make noises when this Quran is being recited. And this is what the non-believers would say. Do not listen to this Quran, rather make noises and make a lot of bad, sounds when this Quran is recited so that you do not hear it. Still, very miraculously, until this day, the Quran is the most read book in the world. You try to suppress it, you try to take it down, you try to do whatever you want. Its preservation is not in the hands of man. Its preservation is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can we doubt that preservation? Of course not. And as Muslims, this preservation may be very subjective, because as a Muslim I may say that, you know what, I believe that the Quran is preserved, and the onlooker, orientalist, or academic may say that, yeah, but the reason you say that it's preserved is because you are a Muslim, and therefore you got to believe that way also. But on the other hand, what is very true and what cannot be denied is history. History is what defines us, isn't it? History took place. History is why you are who you are, why you are who you are, and why you are who you are. That's history, isn't it? History defined us. As individuals, we need to know our heritage. We need to know where we came from. We recite the Quran. Learn how we got the Quran. You learn how we got the Quran. Perhaps you will pick up the Quran and hold it to your heart and kiss the Quran, put it on top of your head, because you know what effort was done in order to preserve the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used man. That's why the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told the companions, لا تكتبوا عني غير القرآن ومن كتب عني غير القرآن فليمحو. Do not write from me except that which is the Quran. Whoever has written anything that is not the Quran, then they should erase it. So imagine a group of individuals now. Bring yourself back into history, 1500 years ago. Take yourself all the way back. During the time of the companions, these individuals, they're looking for guidance. And all of a sudden, one individual comes out and says, I have guidance. And this individual shows them the miracles. This individual teaches them the truth. This individual talks to them and is like a father to them and raises them. And these individuals that are there, they all convert to the faith and the religion of Islam. And now when they convert to the faith and the religion of Islam, all of a sudden the people around them are starting to hate on them. And their parents hate on them. And they're torturing them. Not the type of torture that we see, oh my God, you converted to Islam, you kicked out of the house. No, the type of torture, when you converted to Islam, I will beat you now to death. And not only beat you to death, I'm going to drag you on the streets. Every time you say the word Allah, I will lash you. So much so that the companions would lift their shirts up and you would find bird marks on their back. And the fire would be put up because of the pus and the fat coming out of the one. That's the type of punishment they went through just for saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So in the midst of this, these individuals are being tortured, their parents are being killed in front of their faces, and they're being forced to watch, and they're being tortured and killed. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was stoned on his way out of Taif. And they're being stoned and tortured and hurt, and they're crying to the Prophet ﷺ. But in the midst of all of this, they're looking for this guidance, and they're waiting for this guidance. And what is the guidance? That guidance was the Quran. So when a verse of the Quran was revealed, and a whole group of companions are sitting inside Arqam's house, and they're waiting, and then Zayd runs in and knocks on the window, and they open up the window, and he quickly comes inside and says, "Did you receive? Is there any news? Is there any news at all?" And then all of a sudden, Zayd says, "Yes, there was one verse of the Quran was revealed." What is that verse? What is that verse that was revealed? Because now we're looking for this guy because we see this light. And that verse was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "I swear by time, man is a great loss except for those who believe and do good deeds and call to the truth and call to patience." Can you say that again? Yes. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And all the companions sitting there, because that's the only form of guidance they had. They said that they all memorized it. And they all memorized it. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. They memorized it. And then now they went up, but they couldn't practice Islam out in the open. They couldn't practice Islam right in the open. And this is a small little group, they could have been killed. And if they were killed, there'd be no more Islam. We wouldn't be Muslim right now. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He's going to preserve the Quran. So the Quran needed to be preserved in some way, shape, or form. So these individuals end up in the Battle of Badr, 313 strong, versus 1,000 on the other side. They could have eliminated the whole of the Quran and Islam in one shot. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He's going to preserve the Quran. And the miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always going to happen. And it's true. And therefore, because the Quran needed to be preserved and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decreed and willed it, 300 Muslims easily took out the non-Muslims in such a battle that finished before the battle even started. The battle had finished before the battle even started. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He's going to preserve the Quran. And thus more verses of the Quran were being revealed and revealed and revealed. And the companions were memorizing and memorizing and memorizing. And as the verses of the Quran were being revealed, and as the companions were memorizing them, because this was their only form of guidance. Imagine that you are looking for something. And you have been looking for this for so many years and years and years, and all of a sudden you find it. What are you going to do with it? Are you just going to treat it just like that? No, you're going to take it and hold it to your heart. Worst case scenario, you're going to memorize, because the best form of preservation is to memorize something. That's what the scholars of Hadith, they put it as a condition that an individual would have to memorize the words. And if the person's memory was weak, this person was considered a weak narrator. You needed to memorize. And that's why 2 days ago I said, shame on the person, shame on that scholar who thinks they can speak in religion and they haven't memorized the Quran. Shame on you. Shame on that person who stands up and talks religion and talks fatwa, but they do not have the Quran in their heart. The whole religion of Islam is based on the Quran. You think you can stand up there and give fatwas and start talking when you do not have the Quran in your heart? The first step is the Quran. The first step is the Quran. Bring that into your heart. The companions brought it into their heart. And thus, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he gathered a group of individuals. And he told them that your responsibility is to only write the Quran. لا تكتبوا عني غير القرآن. Do not write for me anything that I say except if it's Quran. If it's Quran, write it. If it's not Quran, don't write it. There's a group of individuals. And they used to write the Quran. And they were known as the Katibin of Wahi. And the scholars have given many, have named them also. And eventually they would write the Quran down. The Prophet did not know how to read and write, but he had delegated this task to those individuals. They would write and they would write and they would write. And at the death of the Prophet ﷺ, the Quran was memorized by hundreds of individuals. And the reason it was memorized was because this was their guidance. They loved it. Because this was what they wanted. Ask yourself a question over here. How many of you love the Quran? Raise your hand. Hands down. How many of you truly love the Quran? Raise your hand. If you are hafiz, keep your hands up. The rest of you, hands down. Look around. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to preserve the Quran. Look at the crisis. The Muslims were surrounded by death right from the beginning. But the Quran was still preserved. Surrounded by death, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, and an individual by the name of Musaylima came out in the open and he said that, you know what, I'm the Prophet now. Some people believed him. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh waged war against this individual. The Muslims went to go fight. And while the Muslims are fighting in this war known as the Battle of Yamama, a lot of the Huffaz were dying. And some narrations say 70, some narrations say 700. And all of a sudden, Umar radiallahu anh, he got this concern, went to Abu Bakr radiallahu anh and said, if we, and listen to the concern he had, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He was going to preserve the Quran. The Quran was going to be preserved. So Umar radiallahu anh went to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sorry, he went to Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, and he told him regarding this battle of Yamama wherein the Huffaz have died. He said, all of these Huffaz are dying. If we're going to keep on letting the Huffaz die, what's going to happen? We're going to lose the Quran this way. So they came to an agreement that they should compile the Quran. But who better to compile the Quran? So they called Zayd radiallahu anhu, who used to write the Quran for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He was one of the scribes. And they called him and they told him, they said, Zayd, you need to compile the Quran because these Huffaz are dying in the battle. If we're going to keep on letting the Huffaz die, the Quran is going to perish. Who brought this concern in the head of Umar radiallahu anhu? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He's going to preserve the Quran needed to be preserved. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought that concern in the head of Umar radiallahu anhu. He went to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. They called Zayd radiallahu anhu. And Zayd radiallahu anhu, after a little bit of pressure, he eventually agreed. He says, yeah, sure, I'll take up the responsibility of compiling the Quran. But he also made a statement at the side. He said, Wallahi, if they told me to move a mountain from its place, that would have been an easier task for me than to compile the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala offered the Quran to the mountains and the skies and the earth, and they all refused. That insan said, we'll take it. It all comes down, you see? Insan said, we'll take it. So, in the midst of all of this, Zayd radiallahu anhu, with the help of Umar radiallahu anhu and other companions, he basically got the whole Quran compiled. He could have written the whole Quran from memory because he was a hafiz. However, no, he made an announcement, and people, who had the Quran written down and people who had memorized the Quran, they came and they, proclaimed that they said their version of the Quran and showed witnesses that, I would, and people came up and said, I witnessed that this verse was revealed, and this verse was written down by this person in front of, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that this is a verse of the Quran. Anyways, this whole, situation, and a whole bunch of rules were there, and eventually the whole Quran was compiled. But Shaitan wasn't happy. Because Shaitan believes in Allah, but he doesn't have Iman. You see, he believes in Allah, but he doesn't have Iman. He doubted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And he got kicked out. The difference between belief and Iman is two different things. Not the halaq of tafsir right now, but so that's a later topic, inshallah, what's the difference between believing and Iman, because Shaitan believed. And he lived in there for crying out loud, right? So anyhow, Shaitan didn't like this, that the Quran was preserved, so Shaitan took another route. He said, and he thought to himself, what better way? The non-Muslims tried to remove the Quran, and it's not being removed, it's being preserved. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Muslims were successful. In the beginning, when they could have been erased, they came out on top strong. The Muslims, they kept on growing, and they keep on growing. And they keep on growing. Imagine how the hypocrites used to feel. Like, wow, we should have just converted to Islam. But no, because they had this thing in their head that, perhaps the Muslims are going to die. But no, that's not really the case. So anyways, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Quran was there. At the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when the Muslims were dying because of the annihilation that was happening to the Huffaz, in the battle of Yamama, Muslims were dying, but the Quran still was on top. They preserved the Quran. The Quran was compiled. So what better way? The best way to kill the situation altogether is, why not have Muslims fight Muslims? So, Shaitan, he went and he started whispering in the ears of the Muslims, and this happened at the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu. and whispering in the ears and the hearts of the Muslims. And these Muslims started to get these doubts, not doubts about their own recitation of the Quran. Because Shaitan's not like that. Shaitan's not going to tell you to do this bad deed and that bad deed. No. He'll create that situation for you, and then you will just follow your desire and end up doing that bad deed, and you're like, wow, oh my God, I wonder how I did it. Well, that door just opened up for you. Oh, okay, now I understand. So Shaitan didn't tell them, you need to doubt the Quran. No. He created for them a situation. Hold on, why is it that the people of Iraq are reciting the Quran differently than the people of Syria? The people of Syria say, Maliki Yawmiddin. Sorry, they say, Maliki Yawmiddin. And the people of Iraq say, Maliki Yawmiddin. How can they both be correct? The Quran is one. There should only be one. They put this doubt in their head and they started to fight amongst one another. So they came in, one group of individuals from Syria, they went to the group of individuals from Iraq and they said, that, you guys are reading wrong. So this group was there like, no, we're not reading wrong. We heard from this companion of the Prophet ﷺ. So this group over here said, yeah, but we heard this from this companion of the Prophet ﷺ. How can they both be right? There has to be only one right way. So this led to an individual playing logic with oneself. Both are correct recitations. You can read Maliki Yawmiddin and you can read Maliki Yawmiddin because the Prophet ﷺ said the Quran was revealed in 7 letters. Reciting that which is easiest for you. So Hisham and Umar radiallahu anhu, they had a little dispute, a little argument. Because Umar radiallahu anhu recited a verse of Surah Al-Furqan differently than the way Hisham radiallahu anhu recited that verse of Surah Al-Furqan. So they both went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they complained to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, Hisham is reading this verse differently. So the Prophet told Hisham, read the verse, and Hisham recited the verse, and the Prophet said, well, that's how it was revealed. And he said, oh Umar, you read the verse, and Umar recited the verse, and the Prophet said, well, that's how it was revealed. It was revealed both ways. And he said, Inna hadha al-Quran, this Quran is revealed on 7 letters, so recited that which is easiest for you. And they're both revealed, so they both recited that way. But this was happening at the time of the Prophet when there was an authority figure there. But now what was happening is authority was being disputed. And when authority was being disputed and Muslims are spreading far and wide into outside cities, eventually this whole idea came into their heads that, the people of Iraq are reading the Quran wrong. And if the people of Iraq are reading the Quran wrong, then that means they believe in the wrong thing to be the Quran, the wrong verse to be the Quran. And they're justifying this wrong recitation. And if they're going to justify this wrong recitation, then they think that the wrong verse is actually the right verse. And if you think the wrong verse is the right verse, and you believe in it in your heart, something wrong to be correct, that takes you out of the fold of Islam. Therefore, all of the people in Iraq are out of the fold of Islam, and the ruling for people that are out of the fold of Islam is that you need to go and wage war against them, you need to kill them. Oh no. And all Shaitan did was just put the thought in your head. You see, he just put that thought in your head that, oh my God, they're reading different, so they're reading it wrong. And then that logic starts to play, it's a little disease that starts to grow. And that logic starts to play, and you're just wondering to yourself, you're like, oh my God, if someone came up to you, every single one of you right now, and added another verse of the Quran that never existed, just said, this is a verse of the Quran, added 8 verses to Surah Al-Fatiha, what are you going to say? You're going to say, no, that's wrong. But he's like, no, that's how it is. There's 8 verses in Surah Al-Fatiha, what are you going to say? Listen, buddy. Muslims believe that there's 7. So are you trying to say I'm not a Muslim because I believe in 8 verses? What are you going to say? Of course. You're going to say, yes, you are not a Muslim because Muslims believe in 7 verses of Al-Fatiha. So imagine the thought going through their head. You people are reading the Quran differently. You read the same word, but you're reading it differently. And because you're reading it differently, therefore, we are going to wage war against you because we don't even believe that you're a Muslim because you're justifying the wrong recitation. Sorry to be a little bit philosophical, but that's actually what happened. So Hudayfa radiallahu anhu was fighting in the Armenian front, came to Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu and told him, he said, these people are fighting about the recitation of the Quran, we need to do something. Look at the crisis. Islam spreading far and wide out of the Arabian Peninsula into the Ajam area. See, how many of you speak Urdu? Raise your hand. Higher. I can't see. Thank you very much. Now I know. Now, how many of you speak Arabic? Raise your hand. How many of you speak English? Raise your hand. Thank you. If someone were to say, come on, y'all, come on over here, and if someone were to say, come on, you all over here, grammatically incorrect, I know, I understand. English professors hurt me. But anyways, if someone says y'all or you all, is anything wrong in the meaning? No. Nothing wrong in the meaning, right or wrong? It's okay. It's okay. But now imagine we bring someone who never ever spoke English in their life and you tell them y'all and you tell them you all, what are they going to say? One of them has to be correct. How can they both be right? But then ask an English person living in America, what's he going to say? You're going to say, yeah, both are right. You say y'all or you say you all, they're both right. In New England, what do we say? We say, I packed my cat in the cat pack. If you go a little bit south, they say, I parked my car in the car park, right? So R is a little more strong. Khakis. No, not khakis. Khakis. That's what you say. Anyways, the accent is different, but what happens is when you bring a non-native speaker into the language, what happens? They don't know the accents, and when you don't know the accent, you think that the other accent is incorrect, yes or no? So now what's happening is Islam is being spread outside of the Arabian Peninsula, and now you have non-Arabs accepting Islam, and they're being exposed to Maliki and Maliki, they're being exposed to Qad Aflaha and Qad Aflaha, they're being exposed to Mu'minun and Mu'minun, and for them it's like, hold on, how can they both be correct? A little thought going through your head. A little thought going through your head. So Hudayfa radiallahu anh, fighting in the Armenian front, came to Uthman radiallahu anh and said, we got an issue, these people are fighting each other. Uthman radiallahu anh himself sensed the problem in Medina itself. He stood up on the pulpit and he said, listen, we have a situation. What's the situation? You guys are fighting amongst yourselves regarding the different recitations of the Quran. It is something which is mutawatir, something which is proven through many chains. Everyone knows that the Quran can be recited in various recitations. But you cannot make up a recitation. You need to recite the Quran in the recitation that was preserved. Look at the beauty behind the Quran now. Shaitan was fighting and making the Muslims fight amongst each other. Uthman radiallahu anh gathered 4 companions, Zayd radiallahu anh being one of them, and instructed them to take the Mus'haf that was compiled at the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh and to sit down and make 5 copies of it. And he sent these 5 copies to the 5 garrison towns, Makkah, Medina, Basra, Kufa, and Sham. Syria, Damascus. Makkah, Medina, Basra, Kufa, and Sham. Some say 7 copies. 1 copy went to Bahrain and 1 copy went to Yemen. But not of that opinion. 5 copies, Makkah, Medina, Basra, Kufa, and Sham. And these 5 copies were made, and these 5 copies were sent to the 5 garrison towns. And they were sent to those towns with individuals who went and taught the recitation of the Quran. And then Uthman radiallahu anh made a statement that really got on the nerves of a lot of people. He said that anyone who has a copy of the Quran has to burn it. Anyone who has a copy of the Quran has to burn it. So keep in mind that now there's only 5 copies of the Quran in the whole Muslim world, and everyone else that had a copy was forced to go and burn it. So much so that Abdul Malik bin Marwan actually went and burned the copy of the Quran that was compiled at the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. He burned that copy also. He said, the order is there, the fatwa is there, we all need to burn our copies of the Quran. And it was a strategic move by Uthman radiallahu anh, so much so a lot of people didn't like it. Ali radiallahu anh said, he said, لا تقولوا في عثمان إلا خيرا. Don't say anything except for good about Uthman radiallahu anh, because whatever he did regarding the Masahif, regarding the Mus'haf, the Quran, and the decision that he made was all done with a group of companions who acknowledged and accepted it. Why burn the copies of the Quran? Because the copies that every single one of you had, based on those copies, you guys are fighting amongst one another. So you know what? Burn the copy. If you want another copy, go copy it now from the copy that Uthman radiallahu anh had compiled. And at that point they said, you are not allowed to write the Quran except the way this Quran has been written in the copies made by Uthman radiallahu anhu. That's why the word Maliki, how do you spell it? In Arabic. Mim, Alif, Lam, Kaf. Go pick up a Muslim right now. Someone get a Muslim for me. Got it. Quickly, get a Muslim. Bring him to the front right now. No? And it's okay, don't give him a Muslim. Put a Muslim here. Open up Surah Al-Fatiha. Tell me how Maliki is written. In the letters. Mim, Lam, Kaf. There's no alif there. There's no alif there. Is there alif there? You said there's no alif. Wrong. I was wrong. You see what I'm saying? It was considered fatwa haram for you to write the Quran in any way besides the way the Quran was written at the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu. Why? Because based on the way people were writing it, they were fighting amongst one another, right? We need to create order. What's wrong? Isn't that cool? Oh, he's smiling, aren't you? He's got a big smile on his face. He's to us. Oh, that's cool. But that's interesting. Very, very interesting. And the Quran was only to be written that way. Someone said that Imam Malik rahimahullah said, يُحْرَمُ مُخَالَفَةُ الرَّسْمِ الْعُثْمَانِ. It is haram to write the Quran differently than the way Uthman radiallahu anhu wrote the Musaf. It's a whole art. Rasmul Quran, or the script, how to write the words of the Quran. It's not written the way you would normally write Arabic. The word Ibrahim is not alif ba ra alif ha ya mim. It's not written that way in the Quran. You find it not written that way in the Quran. The word Malik is not mim alif lam kaf. The word Rahman doesn't have an alif after the mim. It's just straight mim alif, mim noon. There's a specific way that the Quran was written. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to preserve the Quran, and He preserved it. And eventually at that time, Uthman radiallahu anhu came, monopolized everything, and brought it into a form that now we are reciting the Quran. In the midst of all of this, people were reciting the Quran. And when people were reciting the Quran, initially, if someone comes up to you and speaks English in a very bad way. Give me an example of a bad English sentence. I speak you English. Is that right or wrong? Wrong, huh? I speak you English. Right now I speak you English. That'd be a really funny lecture if I spoke like that. Someone was talking to me like that and I said, don't telling me how to speak in English. I'm telling it gooder than you. So if someone speaks English that way, what are you going to tell them? What do you tell them if someone speaks English like that? What do you tell them? You tell them go learn some grammar. Yes or no?
I probably say.
What would you say? I mean, if you had to tell them something, what would you say? If someone says, please help me how to speaking good English, what are you going to say? Go to school and learn what? Learn English. But when you say learn English, what do you mean? Learn the grammar, yes or no? That's what you refer to learn the grammar. Muslims are really lazy. Because we don't know how to recite the Quran. I mean, we do know how to recite the Quran, but we're still making mistakes. If any of us were to talk Arabic or even recite the Quran to an Arab native-speaking individual, right? Nowadays the Arabs are going to tell us, go learn Tajweed. Go learn Tajweed. Back then Tajweed didn't exist. There was no such thing as Tajweed. Back then it was like, dude, go learn some grammar. You get it? If someone was reciting the Quran wrong, they wouldn't tell them to go learn Tajweed. No, that came later on. The concept of Tajweed was brought into existence because of the lazy Muslims that did not want to go learn Arabic grammar. So they created a science that within Arabic grammar that was only focused on how to read the language. And that was called Tajweed. That was called Tajweed. Or else back then it was like learn the grammar. And that's what happened at the time of Uthman, at the time of Ali radiallahu anhu. I'm going chronologically. Are you guys following? We're from the time of the Prophet Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu, Uthman radiallahu anhu. At the time of Ali radiallahu anhu, obviously, Islam was spreading. Over. Islam was spreading even further, and people were making mistakes in the recitation. And Abu Aswad ad-Du'ali, he's seen Ali radiallahu anh very sad. So he went to him and asked him and said, oh, why so sad? And he said, because people are making mistakes in the recitation of the Quran. And they were making grammatical mistakes, not only making grammatical mistakes, like instead of saying mushrikun, they're saying mushrikeen. Instead of saying rasuluhu, they're saying rasulihi. And they're making, these grammatical mistakes. So, Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali and Ali radiallahu anh came to the conclusion that we need to formulate something called Arabic grammar. So Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali, he went and he gathered a few things together, and he wrote up a few pages of Arabic grammar. And Ali radiallahu anh, based on the narrations, Ali radiallahu anh said, "Ma ahsana hada nahwu alladhi nahawt." This is a beautiful path that you have taken, and since then Arabic grammar has been called nahwu. Nahwu just means path, and nahwu just means that. And since then Arabic grammar was called nahwu, based on that. And eventually Abu Aswad al-Du'ali took upon this responsibility that what we need to do is we need to perfect this recitation of the Quran, because people are making mistakes in the recitation of the Quran. Instead of saying Rasuluhu, they're saying Rasulihi. And for Arabs, that's a big grammatical mistake. You change the fatha to a kasra, you change the whole meaning. Daraba Zaydun or Daraba Zaydan. The whole meaning changed. Zayd either hit or he got hit. Right? Or the difference, right? Either Zayd hit Amr or Amr hit Zayd. But then the whole sequence changes because you mixed up the Zamar and the Zair, the Fatha and the Dhamma and the Kasra. You totally mixed it all up. Yeah? But we don't know that because we don't speak the language. We can care less about it. And the Quran that was written at the time of Uthman radiallahu anh did not have any dots on it. It did not have any Fatha, Dhamma, Kasra. The Ba was just a line with no dot underneath. For anyone who, you didn't know how to read it, the Ba, Ta, and Ta look exactly the same. Sorry, Ba, Ta, Ta, Noon looked the same also. Even the Ya looked a little bit like that letter also. Looked exactly the same. There was no difference. A person who had memorized the Quran would be able to read the first word and then eventually be able to copy up the whole thing. Sheikh, have you ever read the old copies of the Quran? So it's hard to physically read it for anyone who's not a Hafiz. But if you're a Hafiz, you read the first word. Once you grasp the first word in your head, you're like this surah, this page, whatever, and then you start reading it on your own. So you need to be a Hafiz. So Hifz was really second nature for the Muslims. Anyway, that's what he sat down, he compiled the first book of Arabic grammar. You can't find it right now, so don't try to Google it. You won't be able to see it. But anyways, he compiled the first book of Arabic grammar, and there's a few sheets of paper. And he talked about Mu'arab and Madani and Ma'arifa and Nakira and Fatha, Dhamma, Hani and Nasab, Jar, Rafa, and all the good grammar stuff. I was a good grammar student, and thus me being really boring. And then eventually, where was that? I'm lost now. Yes, Ali radiallahu anhu, Abu Aswad al-Du'ali. And then he sat down with a few individuals, actually one individual in particular. He sat down with this person, and he said, I am going to recite the Quran to you. I am going to recite the Quran to you. Every time I open my mouth, put a dot on top of the letter. Every time I make my lips round, put a dot in front of the letter. Every time I drop my jaw, put a dot underneath the letter. So he started doing that, reading Alhamdulillahi, and then putting dots in dots, putting the dots in, filling the blank, and putting the dots in there. And then it was really interesting because the whole Quran was written out with little dots, and there were red dots. They were red dots. So what I want you to do now when you go home today, Google old copy of the Quran, and then you go to images. Promoting Google, I don't even know why. And then you go to images, and then you'll find an old copy of the Quran. And when you look at it, you're going to see lines without any dots. But if you look really carefully, you're going to see red dots. You'll see red dots. And if I had a projector, I would show you the red dots, and everyone would be like, oh my God, that is so cool. You see the red dots. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to preserve the Quran, subhanAllah. It's such a miracle. Such a miracle. Right in the beginning, I said in the midst of the crisis, the Quran came out on top. Anyhow, the whole Quran is written this way, and then the Quran is being spread to the Ajams, and Ajam cannot tell the difference between this line, this line, this line, and this line. One with a ba, ta, ta, and a noon, and a ya. They all look the same. They all look the same. Right? Someone who doesn't speak the language, If someone does not speak Mandarin, try to read it. You'll be lost. You'll be like, I don't see it. So now everything's written the same. So now, for the sake of the Ajam and for the sake of the people that did not speak the Arabic language, what needed to be done was you need to be able to differentiate the ba from the ta. So you're going to differentiate the ba from the ta. You put a dot underneath the ba, you put two dots on top for the ta, and you put three dots on top for the ta. If there was a fathatain, the fatha was a dot on top of the letter, kasra was a dot underneath the letter, a dhamma was a dot in front of the letter. And if there was two fathas, and un, ben, bin, bun, ben, din, tun, then there was two dots on top of the letter, two dots in front of the letter, two dots underneath the letter. Ghafur Rahim, it would be a beam with two dots in front of it to show that's Rahim 1. Two dots in front of it. So anyways, in the midst of all of this, all of a sudden there was kathratun nuqat. There was a lot of dots. And then you see one letter with 1, 2, 3, 5 dots on top of it. And you're like, what are these dots for? Is it Or let's say there was 4 dots on top. Is it a tha with a fatha, or is it a tha with fathatain? You don't know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to preserve the Quran, and the whole Quran is preserved. And eventually they differentiated the two. They made the dots for the letters, and then they just took those dots and stretched the note, made it into a line. And now you have the fatha, the kasra, and you have the dots. Anyways, then, after the time of the Khulafa al-Rashideen, all of this was done so that we can recite the Quran. All of this was done so that we can recite the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, brought this, to us in such a way that it was beautiful. He promised to preserve the Quran, and to this day we find the Quran on our shelves. And we're reading the Quran. It is so beautiful. It is truly very beautiful. The amount of work that was done in the Quran. The scholars of Tajweed, they put together a science to assist lazy Muslims who don't want to go and learn Arabic. So you created a science for them that assisted them in reading the verbatim words of the Quran. They tell them every time you see a noon and you see a ta after that, then you need to stretch the noon sound. If you see a meme with a shadda on top of it, you need to stretch it. Thumma, inna. And they created rules. Every time you see an alif with a hamza after that, you need to stretch the sound. Sha'a. And created these little, these rules to help us recite the Quran. So the Quran was the way it was recited at the time of the Prophet ﷺ was preserved and preserved and preserved and recited at the time of after the Prophet passed away, and recited during the time of the companions, and recited after the companions had passed away, and kept on being recited until me and you are reciting the Quran right now, exactly how the Prophet ﷺ recited the Quran. Is that not beautiful? I don't think you understood. Is that not beautiful?
Yes.
That's very beautiful. Not only that, there are thousands of young children who memorize the Quran the way the Quran was memorized at the time of the Prophet ﷺ without even knowing the meaning. Is that not beautiful?
Wow.
Not only that, the way the calligraphy behind the Quran, when people used to write the Quran, it's so beautiful. The recitation of the Quran, reciting in a good voice, it's so beautiful. When people apply this beauty within the Quran, it's so beautiful. Open up Surah Al-Fatiha. Open up Surah Al-Fatiha. A lot of people don't notice this, but on top of the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, is there flowers in the corners? You see flowers in the corners of the page? Let me show you. Look over here. You see the little flowers here, these stars, and these flowers? You see it? Along the bottom, along the sides? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Is that not beautiful? They made the Quran beautiful that way. Look at the along the sides. Right? It is so beautiful. Everything to do with the Quran is beautiful. They used to write it with calligraphy, and write it with such emphasis. There was a reason why the Ottoman Empire did not want to fall into the concept of did not want to follow with the printing press. You guys know what happened, right? The Ottoman Empire and the printing press. How many of you know the story of the Ottoman Empire and the printing press? Raise your hand. You know about the Ottoman Empire and the printing press. What? The main thing was that the Ottoman Empire, they weren't sold on the idea that the Quran can be printed out, mass copies of the Quran through the printing press. Why? They love the Quran so much. They said that the Quran is so beautiful and the Quran is such that we cannot let the non-wudu and the non-ghusl hand write the Quran. You want to create copies of the Quran, get people sitting down and let them write the copy of the Quran, let them write the Quran down. But we don't want to have these haram situations or these haram individuals or this, with the haram money go out and print copies of the Quran with their haram money. Is that allowed or is that not allowed? And they said, no, we're not going to accept this at all. True or false? You read the history, you know the history. They don't want that to happen. And they preserved it. And they used to make money, they just keep on writing the Quran. The students would memorize, they would write the Quran, they would have their own copy. This is the copy that I wrote of the Quran. Imagine how much value you would have of the Quran if you wrote your own copy of the Quran. And now we take it for granted. Why? Because we just need to call the Saudi embassy, like, can you please send this box of the Quran? Sure, we'll send you a box of the Quran. We'll send you a box of the Quran. So these same individuals printing the Quran, smoking and using and doing all kinds of makruh things, and talking and gossiping and backbiting and doing all kinds of haram stuff, and at the same time the Quran is being preserved and putting it in machines and putting it together and giving it. You think a true Muslim would truly like that or love that? No. You love the Quran, write your own copy of the Quran. It's so beautiful. And the Quran is preserved to this day. And people are perfecting the recitation of the Quran. That the same effort was done from the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The exact same effort is done right now. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us the ability to understand the struggles that was done by the Muslim Ummah to give us the Quran that we have right now. Yeah. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us the ability to understand what was said. Read up on your history. Every single one of us should read the story of the preservation of the Quran and see how beautiful it is. You can see the true beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that in the midst of death, what came out on top? The Quran was always on top. The promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always proves true. To this day, the Quran is the most read book in the world. The Quran is the greatest da'wah in the world. You try to talk to people about Islam, they don't care about what you're saying. You give them the Quran, they will convert to Islam right away. Let the Quran speak. Let the Quran speak. Why do you want to speak on it? Are you a scholar? No. You want to give someone da'wah, give them the Quran, and say, you know what, go ahead. Have the mentality of Abdul Muttalib when the people of the elephant came and they wanted to destroy the Kaaba. He said, by all means, go ahead. He said, go destroy, do whatever you want. The owner of the Kaaba, the owner of the house will take care of the house, the house itself. As an individual, be proud of the fact that we have the Quran. We need to be proud of the fact that we are Muslims and we connect ourselves with the Quran. And I would urge everyone that if we want to be good Muslims and if we want to be strong in the religion of Islam, what should we do? Read about your heritage. Read about your history. Read about your past. And then when you read about your past, you read about, how these individuals used to respect the Quran and read the Quran and study the Quran. Even in recent times, when the Africans were brought into America and our slaves, and they used to teach Quran in private to their children, they used to force them to become Christians, etc. They were still reading the Quran. Muslims love the Quran. We love the Quran. Don't try to take it away from us. And even if you try, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to preserve the Quran. The Quran is going to be preserved. It doesn't matter how many people try to hurt it and try to ruin it. And the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if all of the people in the world got together to harm someone, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not decree this person to be harmed, can anyone harm them? And if all of the people in the world got together, beginning to the end, insan and jinn, and every single creature got together to give benefit to someone, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not decree to happen, can anyone benefit? All of the non-Muslims in the world at that time wanted to shun down the Quran and to remove the Quran. Every single one of them. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to preserve the Quran. Do you see the relationship of this hadith with this scenario, yes or no? And the Quran still came out on top. You read the Quran is going to intercede for you on the day of judgment. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, let the Quran intercede for us on the day of judgment. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين.
payment.
So we're gonna make it then now. On the note, we have, alhamdulillah, we're on break now because of Ramadan. But after Ramadan,